I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Hello?
Yo, can you hear me? Hello.
Yep, I can hear you and I can see you.
All right, we're off to a good start then.
That is excellent. Yes.
Yeah. Am I speaking with Victor?
Yes, you are, sir.
Hey, Victor, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm excellent, but I'm getting better by the moment.
End of the line for today for interviews?
Yeah, for right now. Yeah, quick one.
Yeah. Cool. I have a bunch of questions here for you.
I have a bunch of answers.
Awesome. The guy behind you isn't going to answer anything, is he?
Oh, no, he'll talk in a minute. Yeah, he brings Happy Meals out in between.
All right, cool. You're originally from Detroit, correct?
Yes, sir. We're on, right? I hope you're on from the beginning.
I've been recording from the beginning.
I like it. That's my man, Victor. It sounds like you're almost from Detroit, if you're doing that.
Why do you think so many people revere Detroit as a big stronghold for rock music? What do you think is the it factor that Detroit has that other cities don't?
I don't know. I do. You know what it is? It's the attitude.
Okay.
That Detroit is a hardworking town. And,
right.
You know, I live in California right now, and I never really realized the specialness of it until I left.
Right.
You know, you grow up, and I was born and raised there, and born and raised with a certain fighting attitude.
Right.
You know, and I carried that through today. And I think it's in my drumming, how I play. We just do everything a little bit harder than everybody else. You know, it's a tougher lifestyle there. It's blue collar, you know, it's factories. And, you know, the epicenter of it was the 60s and the 70s there, because before that, everybody migrated there to, you know, look for work.
Right.
You know, so you brought all these hardworking people there who were probably poor and looking for work, and it kind of, you get hardworking people and you work hard, and then you play hard, and you want to go to the bar and have a beer, and Detroit people want to hear bands rocking and rolling. They want to sweat. They want to feel the music. So that's how I grew up. I would say it's the attitude, it's the circumstance of everything. You know, you kind of hear the same thing. You know, I was so lucky to play with Black Sabbath, and they were from Birmingham, England. It's a very, it's like Detroit transplanted in England. It's gray. There's a lot of factories, and the music, even though it's different, it's very similar. It's very hard edged. It's very hard edged blues based. Right. So believe it or not, I really saw a lot of similarities.
Gotcha.
And I think that's kind of why we kind of got along a lot of because our outlook on music was the same, you know. Right. There's a certain attitude that you have to have to play that kind of music, and you should want to kick everybody's ass is what it is. Yeah, you know, absolutely. Bands in Detroit, where I come from, you want to destroy the other guys. You know, you don't want to leave anything left for them. Right. And California is not that way. Everybody's nice and everybody's gets along, and hey, how are you? But I don't operate that. I'm nice, but I want to kick your ass when it comes to playing rock and roll. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're not leaving anything left to the imagination. You're getting straight to the point. You're laying all the, you know, chips on the table, and this is who you are. So, you know, you're not, as you're saying, someone who maybe, I don't know, doesn't want to share that same type of approach when it comes to playing. You're giving people what you think they need.
Well, I mean, I got into music. You can only do it your way. Right. You know, when you start, that doesn't mean you don't take advice from people, but when you play from the heart, I think that translates to people. Right. You know, when you're not, it doesn't come across the same way. So, you know, a very important part of playing music is just letting yourself, you know, out.
Right.
You kind of, from the time I was a little kid growing up, people said, oh, you can't play that way. You can't hit the drums like that. You're too loud. You're too this, you're too that. And if I would have listened to them, I'd be playing in a wedding band, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting how you're talking about, putting your feeling into your playing. One of the things that drives me nuts, and I grew up playing drums as well, obviously not at your level, but when people start to talk about the greatest drummer, the greatest guitarist, the greatest this, people don't realize that a lot of it comes down to that player's feeling, the way, each individual person plays a little different. You can kind of approach something, but you're still going to do it your way. I don't think that, at the end of the day, obviously you have your connections to Ozzy and Sabbath. I've always haven't had an affinity for Bill Ward and his playing. I also love John Bonham. To me, I can listen to both and I don't need them to compete. I can have a burger and I can have pizza. I can enjoy both. I don't need it to be a competition all the time. Do you think it's fair, as a player at your level to be compared to other players, or to have, someone say someone has to be the absolute greatest? Or
that's just the way it is. People like to rank people, and that's just all they have. When you don't do it, people love to try to either build you up or knock you down. I mean, I get it. I mean, I love Bill Ward's playing. I love John Bonham's playing, but I also know that there's a lot of other musicians out there that, those are more popular bands, but I may think there's other musicians that have different talents that I enjoy that people may not even know about.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's all personal preference. What I like about music, or what I consider great, is not what a lot of other people consider great, especially in the rock world. I listen to a lot of blues. My bar is a different bar for what great is. I listen to a lot of early rock and roll, like Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis and Fats Domino, and Little Richard. And even before that, Jimmy Reed and Elmore James. And when I listen to this music, or I listen to Louis Armstrong, and when I listen to him, I go, wow, that is great. That is pure genius. When I listen to Ray Charles, I go, that is great. That is pure it's genius through the mind and through the soul there. It just surpasses all this other stuff that people say is great, whether it's, there's a lot of bands that we're not mentioning that I go, man, that's not great. It's good, but it's not as great as that stuff. So it's all, it's all relative. In music, there's not a scorecard. At the end of a basketball game, it doesn't matter who was a better player. It matters who put more baskets in the hoop. That's what matters. But there's a lot of personal opinion in music, and that's part of the gig. You know what I mean? People are gonna, not think I'm great, or some people are gonna think I'm great. You can't listen to the ones who don't think you're great, and you can't listen to the ones who think you're great. You just got to do what you do.
Right. Gotcha. Makes sense. Next question. When I was a kid growing up wanting to be an aspiring drummer, I grew up in an age where, Kiss was the first band that I was turned on to. As a result, as a kid, I always wanted to play a Pearl drum kit because Peter Criss played a Pearl. For you growing up, was there a brand that you wanted to play because you saw someone playing and said, that's going to be mine. That's going to be the first thing that I'm going to play?
Yeah, sure. When I was a little kid, like everybody else, the first drum set I had was it was actually a Blue Sparkle Royce, which I think is like, like some cheap Japanese brand. And then I got a really cheap, Pearl was big in the 80s. That's when I'm from. That was the thing. I had a really cheap Pearl drum set. And I was loyal to that for a while, but that's just kid stuff. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I mean, and then I started playing, you know, like actual gigs very early. So I got out of all that. Thankfully, I got out of all that, like copying drummers in my early teens. It was more about actually playing gigs. You know, I see big time guys and they're just trying to copy Bonham or copy Bill Ward or copy Ian Pace, but a lot of Bonham I see, which is cool, but you're just going to be a bad version of Bonham, you know? And Bonham doesn't always fit into other bands, you know? It just doesn't always work, you know?
And not only that, it's the same patterns as well. You know, he did more than Kashmir. You know, he did do Achilles' Last Stand, and he, you know, he varied a lot of stuff where he didn't just play like one specific, you know, tempo.
But his style fit. He was a counterpoint to the three other guys in Led Zeppelin. But that playing Bonham in Sabbath wouldn't work. You know, I've heard the guys tell stories that he even came and sat in with them in a studio, and it sounded like it didn't sound very good. You know, that's from their mouth. And maybe if Bill Warden sat in with Zeppelin, it wouldn't sound good. You know, so you can only try to be yourself at the end of the day is kind of my point. And it's great to be a fan, but at some point I think you gotta to be one of the guys, which I'm trying to be one of the guys. I want to stand on my own 2 feet, whether you like it or not. That's the goal for me. So you kind of got to get over being fanboy a little bit and do what you do, you know? That's my point of view on where I'm kind of heading.
Makes sense. Obviously we're mentioning, you know, your connections with Sabbath, and you played with Ozzy and with Alice Cooper and so on and so forth. Do you think that helps or hinders you when you try to do your own project? Do people put certain expectations on you because of that, or does that not even come into play?
It doesn't come into play. You know, I just kind of made a record for my own enjoyment. I'm not taking it too seriously. I had this downtime with this worldwide shutdown, and I just tried to make a rock and roll record in the style and the vein that I enjoy. Because there was no music going on, and I finally had a big block of time to go do something, meaning a record of my own. So I went and did it. But you know, I don't worry about other people. I just move forward and do my thing. It doesn't catch my radar. You know, I'm never going to be a drummer who gets on the #1 on the polls or all this kind of stuff. You will never see my name because first of all, I don't care. Second of all, I'm not in that. I'm not a drumistic drummer. That's not what I do. And I don't talk drumistic things. I don't subscribe to it. It's not my path. So I'm not concerned with other drummers, especially. The last people I'm concerned with is other drummers to try to impress. In fact, I think that's the kiss of death, to be honest with you. First of all, you want to be concerned with who's paying you or hiring you. And you want the guys on stage, you want to be the best drummer they've ever had. That's what I'm concerned with. That's where my focus is on. And then the audience after there. You know, I want to pay respect to them and give them a good evening that they paid their hard-earned money. So I'm going to play my guts out for them. I play for the audiences and the people on stage. And that doesn't always translate into a lot of getting a pat on the back from other musicians. You know, from the guys I care about, it does. I notice real musicians who get it understand what you're doing. But when you're pyrotechnic guy, and we know who's out there who gets a lot of drum accolades. It's very easy for people to go, oh, he's great, because they see the pyrotechnics in it. It's like I'll go back to the basketball reference. When you're you know, you're the guy who gets the assist, you know, who passes the ball to the 3-point shooter. 3-point shooter is going to get the pat on the back, but
Yeah.
not the assist guy. But coaches and other players are going to go, yeah, but that guy gets us the score and that's how I look at my drumming. I want to bring the band up so they're a great band on stage. I don't need to shine above. I want it to be a unit up there.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously you wouldn't have worked with all the people that you have worked had it have been different, as you're saying. There's, I've seen comments on social media about, people playing 200 beats per minute or hitting splash cymbals every other, note. I remember there was this interaction a few years ago between Mike Portnoy and Matt Sorum. And Portnoy posted something to the effect of, hey, Matt, why did you play the same drum fill in November Rain every whatever measures? And Sorum responded with, well, that's what I was paid to play, and that's how I was asked to play. And he basically said, no matter how many beats you're hitting, in 100 years, people are going to remember Ringo Starr, John Bonham, X amount of people, regardless whether I played double bass for X amount of measures instead of playing the fill I was asked to play. Says no one's going to remember that then. So I
I would tend to agree with them on that one. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of an, when people say that, if you don't know the answer to that, that gives you kind of what they're about,
Right.
If you've got to ask that question, you're missing something about what we're talking about.
Yeah. No, I get it 100%. And look, how many people have wanted to be in your position playing with Ozzy, and how many years have you been playing with him? So that's a testament to all this as well. There's been a lot of fly-by-nighters or flashy players, as you're saying, but can they do the part? So everything you're saying makes sense. The songs that you have on RockTrip Beat Up, Tommy's RockTrip Beat Up by Rock and Roll, were these all songs that you put together during the pandemic, or were these songs that you were compiling beforehand?
No, I had never written a song in my life.
Oh, wow.
Prior to ever doing this. So it was, specifically for this. Wow. And I just kind of crammed them out last minute. And, sometimes it works out good that way, when you're under a little pressure.
Yeah. Wow. That I've honestly, not bullshitting you, I would have never guessed that, because, I think a lot of people now are doing the quote unquote retro rock stuff where they're trying to use certain instruments, certain sounds, but the songs aren't there. Whereas the feeling in these songs really are a throwback, but at the same time, they don't sound sonically 100% like they were recorded then. It's kind of a mix of both. It's kind of a mix of modern sound with an old school feel. Would that be a fair assessment?
I'd say absolutely. The approach and the recording, we recorded it in one room.
Okay.
No trickery. There was no click tracks, no cutting and pasting. We didn't even wear headphones, meaning that I'm listening to the guitar amp, I'm listening to the bass amp, and they're listening to my drums. So, and I just wanted to get a raw performance captured of three guys as a rhythm track, and that's what we did. So often you're confined with headphones and cables and you can't hear the same way. I wanted it to be as live as possible. Right. So I just wanted to get the best sounds that, we didn't make a big stink about it. I recorded it in a barn with a buddy of mine who I knew would kind of get what I was going to do. And we threw up some mics and kind of, should we move it a little? Okay, well, that's where it sounds best. Done. Let's get the drums. Let's, do we got to dampen that a little bit? Sure. Okay, that sounds good. Move on. And make more the focus on getting a good performance. I don't think that when drums sound, like they're recorded at, the biggest studio in the world, these huge fake drums, I don't think that makes the music any better.
Right.
You know, it can, but that's what I wasn't after that. All my favorite records, you know, maybe the drums don't even sound good.
Mhm.
It's not about that. Maybe you
Right.
can't even hear the bass drum, you know, a lot of music, you can't even tell what's going on, but there's something there. So I wanted to
Yeah.
capture that vibe and that rawness of playing. And I think I did do that. You know, did I use some cool amps that I knew would sound good? Yeah. Stuff that I have, and cool drums that I knew would sound good. Yeah. But I wasn't after trying to go like, oh, I need this to sound like Jimi Hendrix guitar or
Right.
George Harrison guitar, because then you're just, it's so derivative. It, you know, it sounds like a bad version of whatever. You know, it's like, yeah, okay, the drums sound like Bonham, but so what? You know, does it serve the song? No. So I think we kind of got our own little sound out of just playing together, you know, and creating the best sound without making too much of a big stink about it, you know. So it was kind of like kids going in. I just wanted to kind of keep that rawness of, hey, let's just, you know, we're not going to spend 8 hours getting drum sounds. By that time, you don't even want to go in the studio.
Right.
You know, you want to keep the momentum going. You know, we would blow up a guitar amp, and I would literally grab another one and put it where the other one is, and mic it and turn it on, and let's go again while you're hot and sweaty. You know,
Right.
because being in that moment, that's the most important thing to me. You know, getting the vibe. You know?
Yeah, it definitely sounds like that as you're saying it. The album, I think there's two things. It's a fun album, without a doubt. And the second thing is it really, again, sounds like something, you know, old school in the sense like what you're describing. People in a tight little space just jamming something out and getting something out there. I think what you're saying 100%. You have so many things where people are trying to capture a specific sound to make that sound like it came out 40 years ago, but it's missing that attitude. And it feels like that attitude is in this playing.
Yeah, because at the bottom of it all, it's got to be good musicians and it's got to be good music.
Yeah.
You know, and then how do you translate that on tape? You know, I've played on records and sometimes it didn't get translated because you're using all this technology and you're playing to some loops and everybody's trying to go get that energy out of the music the way bands used to, but then they don't want to put the work in to do it. You know, when you're playing just us in a room and there's no technology, if somebody makes a mistake, you got to do it again. You know, if you don't want to cut and paste and you want to get one performance, you got to do the whole thing. And that is more of a tough job than me coming in and, you know, recording the guitars separate and then I can take my time with the drums. I didn't want to have any part of that. So I really enjoyed the old school aspect of that because that's how I play music is, you know, you got to fly by the seat of your pants. That being said, you have to rehearse and you got to know where you're going. You got to know where you're going so you can improvise within that structure, you know? And I think bands used to put more work back in the day. So we just did like, you know, we got in my rehearsal room and rehearsed for like 4 or 5 days and learned all the stuff and went over and over and over. By the time we got in the studio, we just did the exact same thing, you know?
Yeah, the muscle memory was there. You guys knew where you
a
were
little
going.
muscle memory, so you know where you're going, but you don't want to beat it to death, so there's not that spark.
Yeah. No, that makes
so the whole record was done in the whole record from first recording to mastering was done in 2.5 weeks.
Holy shit.
You know, we recorded
amazing.
all the you know instrumental tracks in 3.5 days. You know.
Wow. So you said the three of you were jamming. Who are your other two counterparts that were in that barn with you?
In the room was a great bass player, younger guy named Elliot Larongo, who's a great bass player, and I'm very proud of how he played on the album. And then a guitar player from Japan called Nao Nakashima. And then I had a young guitar player named Hank, who played some of the leads afterwards,
Okay.
after the basic tracks were done.
Okay. And you sing some of the tracks on the album. You sing 3 tracks.
I did, yeah.
Similar to you saying before that it was the first time that you had written anything. This was the first time you sung anything, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Don't hold it against my drumming. You know, the only reason I ended up singing was because, you know, Eric Dover sang lead on 95% of the album, and he's got a great voice.
Right.
I had initially laid out what they call scratch vocals for him to learn the melodies and the lyrics and kind of know, you know, this is what I want you to sing.
Mm-hmm.
But 3 of the tracks, I listened to the scratch vocals and I go, man, those sound kind of cool for that. They kind of had a vibe. And I said, you know, let's just leave it. Right. So I just left it. It was that simple.
Cool.
I'm not a singer by any means, and it's not any kind of career move. It was just, you know, one of the songs on the album is called Make Me Smile. It's about my lovely wife, who's the most sexiest woman I've ever met. And that's all about her. So I go, well, I gotta sing that.
Right.
Or it's not, I can't have Eric sing it. She'll fall in love with him.
Right.
And then there's the last song on the album is called The Power of 3, which is about my daughter, who's going to be 4 years old. And we call, you know, it's me, my wife, and my daughter. It's The Power of 3. That song is about us. And that was a gift to my daughter. I go, I got to sing that or it's not from my heart, you know?
Right.
And then the last song was called Beat Up by Rock and Roll. And it's kind of my take on what this whole madness is, kind of how I feel. You know, it sounds like a negative song, Beat Up by Rock and Roll, like it's bringing me down, but I kind of get strength out of it. So I go, I got to sing that. And that's kind of how it happened.
Mm-hmm. How did you get Eric involved in this? Was he the guy that you wanted to work with initially, or how exactly did you manage to, or not manage, but why did you decide to have him come in and do the vocals?
I've known, me and Eric played in Alice Cooper's band together. I think it was 2004. And I always liked Eric's, let's say, wackiness. He's got a wackiness to him. He's a avant-garde guy. And I like, as much as I'm a straight ahead guy, I wanted something different on my album. And I know Eric is a great rock and roll singer. In fact, I think he's more of a rock singer than people give him credit for. He really shines on the stuff. And I knew that his avant-garde approach and he has a timbre to his voice that's different, but really fits with hard rock music really good.
Right.
I couldn't have asked him to do a better job. He's a great talent in the studio and live. You know, all I had to say was, do it like this. And he just does it. He's a talent. So, you know, I didn't have to like teach him how to do it. He just does it. And he took my ideas and he's got a great voice. So it was very simple and it was an easy choice.
The other cool thing that I really like about the album is no 2 songs sound alike. I've been hearing from people over the years how, well, if band X is playing or band Y is playing, everything on the album has to sound the same in order for them to sell that to an audience. And my train of thought is always the same, that, you know, when I grew up listening to music, it was never like that. You put an album on beginning to end and it was a musical journey. No song sounded alike. And I think that's a lost art. And listening to this, again, every song is completely different to make you want to listen to everything there.
I think they are. There's a lot of different, some songs are funkier than the others, some are bluesier, but I think they all follow under the same kind of umbrella where it kind of fits, you know, because of the approach.
Right.
Because it's guys playing in a room and, you know, I didn't want it to be too straight ahead and I didn't want it to be too wacky either. You know, there's the fine line there of getting too cutesy wootsy with stuff, you know, where you lose people, you know, so I wanted it to be tight and impactful. But that being said, I wanted some musicality to come through too.
Sure.
Because it's kind of what I dig. You know, I dig things that have some movement to them and maybe some clever parts, but they're not too clever. You know,
Right.
there may be a section where you go, holy shit, what was that? And then it comes you back in the riff, you know, like some cool hits or something. But that's just cool rock and roll stuff. Even if you listen to AC/DC, it may seem very simple, but when you sit down and learn little things in there, it's not very simple.
Right.
When you listen to some early Aerosmith, there's parts in this stuff that when it's executed properly, it doesn't trick your ear too much to where you get disjointed. It all flows.
Right.
You know, I kind of wanted to sneak that stuff in there to where it just enhances the listening, hopefully, and doesn't take you away from, you know, getting into it.
Yeah.
It's just a part of this, you know. It's like if I play a drum solo, I don't want to lose the crowd. I want to corral them.
Sure.
And have them go with me. And then also it's timing and phrasing that's very important in music. You know, it's not all, if you're, you know, you listen to these guitar players or drummers, it's just a endless that
absolutely
endless. So when it's time to really do something, there's no climax.
Yeah, there's no place to go.
That goes for everything in life. You know, you want to build to a climax, you know?
Yeah. I agree. I'll tell you my holy shit moment. Every time that I hear this song, it grabs me. The chorus to Welcome to the Show. There's just something about it. Once it goes into that chorus, it just has something that just sucks me in. It's like, yeah, this kicks ass.
Hey, cool. So, I'm glad you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That was the aim.
Awesome. There's a famous journalist that I follow who has a podcast, and one of the things that I disagree with him the most is that he always says that he doesn't want to hear an album by someone's bass player or someone's drummer or things like that.
I can't say I don't disagree sometimes.
Okay, so what do you think you've done with this album to dissuade someone like that with their opinion?
I think I approach things more with a band attitude.
Okay.
And I'm not a drumistic drummer, so I don't think the same way musicians, I don't think in a musician way, I think in a band way. And I think that's what's different. I don't think you hear, this is not a drummer's record at all.
Right.
It's not it's not an instrumental record at all. And it doesn't take that approach. It sounds, I think you could put this on the radio and go, okay, that fits in with classic rock radio.
Right.
So, I mean, and I think a lot of people don't think that drummers can be musical. And that was kind of one of the reasons that I go, why not make a record? People don't think I can write songs. People don't think that I can put a band together. People don't know that I can do these things. I know, I believe I can. So why not, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
I think sometimes, you know, where I'm coming from that attitude. So I think it was a point of mine to get that out there.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You're not finding, for anyone that's watching or listening to this interview, you're not going to hear any musical wankery. It's all about the attitude of the song.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm not a fan of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it calls for a moment in time, you know, you'll hear me play flurries on the drums, but for the most part, I think people think I'm a busier drummer than I really am, because they may see two bass drums. And, you know, people say heavy metal. They always start to say heavy metal. And I'm like, I'm really not heavy metal. I'm pretty damn straight ahead in my approach. You know, when it calls for it, I play heavy gigs, but Black Sabbath to me is a rock band. They're heavy.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, but you know, Ted Nugent is heavy, but he's rock. Yeah. You know, and to me, it's the same as AC/DC. You just take that bass drum away, you know? So, you know, you got to know when to just throttle through. And that goes for every instrument. And maybe what this journalist guy is talking about, that 99% of musicians are very self-serving, you know, and I never want to come off that way. I want to be all the guys that I've worked for, they know how to play for the audience or play for the music. And that's what I'm interested in. And, and I think this little experiment of a record that I did, that it shows who I am musically, hopefully.
Right. Coming to the close of the interview here, I do want to ask you, you've played with so many big name musicians. Is there anyone left on your wish list to play with?
Dead or alive, or both?
How about both?
Okay. Man, I would have loved to play with Jimi Hendrix. I think we could create some racket. I would have loved to play for Elvis Presley. You know, he has one of my favorite drummers, a guy named Ronnie Tutt, who's actually one of the early double bass rocker guys. He just had such a cool style. I would love to play for Bob Seger. I'm a huge Bob Seger fan. I'd love to play for AC/DC. I'd love to play for Aerosmith. I'd love to. I mean, there's so many great bands out there, you know. But I've been so fortunate to play for great bands that I love and I've wanted to play for. You know, I remember my dad took me to go see Alice Cooper when I was like 12 or something. And I go, I'm going to play in his band. And I remember him getting me like a live Ozzy DVD and watching it and going, I'm going to play in his band. And, you know, like my dad taking me to see Mitch Ryder locally in Detroit. And I go, oh, I can play in his band. I ended up playing in his band. And, you know, growing up in Detroit, and you see old Ted Nugent road cases on gigs or posters in a record store. And then you end up playing for that guy. And it's all, I wouldn't say that I always knew it would happen. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I just mean it that it's where I was going and my mind was always there. I feel blessed to do so, but I always worked towards it and knew that these things were coming my way. And I know more is coming my way. So maybe I'll get to play for some of these people that I mentioned, you know, besides the dead ones. But it ain't, I'm just getting warmed up.
Could you see a follow-up to this album having more of, say, like guest singers or anything like that?
I don't know. It depends what mood I would be in, to be honest with you. I don't know. I kind of like just decide if something comes up, this is what I'm doing. And I don't think I would want to have multiple anything, because I don't like that. It never sounds unison. If I had to guess, probably not. I would love to use Eric again. He's saying great. If the opportunity ever presented itself, and then maybe we could do something different, you know, but the same.
Okay. At this point, with everything that's still going on in the world, what does the rest of 2021 have in store for you?
Well, I have gigs coming up. I just signed on with this band, the Dead Daisies.
And
we have gigs coming up in June and July. And then who really knows the future right at this moment? Nobody does. So.
Okay. And where should people go to keep up with what you have going on?
I guess, well, I'm not on any social media under my own name. I'm not interested. In fact, I'm so far removed from that side of things, but I know they started a Tommy's RockTrip, all the stuff. If you just look up Tommy's RockTrip, then there's some, you know, band info on there for the record and stuff like that.
Awesome. Okay.
But I'm horrible at all this social media stuff. In fact, I shy away from it because who cares what I'm eating for lunch or that I broke a drumstick? I don't care, you know.
Yeah. Time to replace a snare head or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's just not for me. I'm too busy with my daughter and my life to be doing that stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. I appreciate your time. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I thoroughly enjoy the album, and I wish you much success with it.
Hey, Victor, I really appreciate you taking the time and having me on. All the best to you. And thank you, everybody out there. I hope you enjoy the album, and I really enjoyed making it for everybody, and I like it. If you guys like it, what a bonus. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
Thank you, Victor. Have a good one, buddy.
Okay.